All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Rocket League Replays Workshop number 8. And it's, I think, the one that most people have been waiting for, sort of. I'm doing the first set of the Grand Finals. It's going to be Dignitas versus NRG. I kind of doubt anyone who's watching this show hasn't already seen the Grand Finals, but if you haven't, you should definitely go watch it. This is just going to be the first set because there was a bracket reset. So if you haven't watched the second set, as soon as you get finished watching this, you should go watch the second set. And then I'll be covering that one next week. It does go to 7 games, and this one goes to 5. So I figured 12 games, one sitting might be a little bit too much. Yeah, I mentioned this in a tweet I made, and I don't feel that I'm exaggerating when I say that this Grand Finals was the best Rocket League we've ever seen. Both of these teams were playing so well. So many really good goals. Not too many goals that were off of major mistakes. Almost every goal is off of some minor mistake, because that's how Rocket League goes. You know, if defense is played perfectly, you're probably not going to get scored on. But it's not like there were just huge catastrophes leading to these goals like you see in some series. And honestly, it's so good that it feels a little bit hard to cover, because there's some moments that, you know, someone makes some smart play, and in most other series I would have been pointing it out, but they're just happening all the time in this Grand Finals. And even these teams, I feel, shift their play style a little bit because they really respect each other, and they know that they're two of the absolute best teams in the world, the two best teams in the world at this tournament, at least I would say. I do think especially that these are the two smartest teams in Rocket League. They, as a whole, you know, they're very smart players individually, and they just work well as a team. They just mesh really well and really intelligently, and the way that they, you know, use each other, funnel challenges to each other rather than just trying to outright win every challenge, is something really refreshing. And it's something that, if you look at how, like the development of other sports and stuff, it was to be expected that these kinds of things would start coming together as teams got better. But it's really coming to fruition now, and it's great to see. One big theme I did notice in terms of how Dig liked to attack NRG is they would frequently throw balls really high off the backboard. Those ones that make an awkward corner coming down bounce, because they know that NRG's defense is tough to crack. So even though that play is not going to work every time, it still might eventually lead to something good. Like I said, there was really too many smart plays in this series for me to highlight all of them. So I'm going to preface this by talking a little bit about how both of these teams are so good at all of their touches are meaningful. It's a good way to put it, I guess. And I think that's something, even if I'm not highlighting anything, if I'm just letting the game roll for like 30 seconds, sometimes I don't have any particular thing I want to draw attention to, but I want you guys to pay special attention to how almost every touch has a purpose. A lot of times you'll see players think, oh, I can't do much with it, I'll just throw it to the other side and buy time for my team. But what these guys are thinking is, I don't need to throw it as far as I possibly can. I need to put it in a place that's as awkward for the other team as possible. And that's how I'm going to buy as much time as possible. Make them make a bad hit. Or even, sometimes you don't have a teammate to pass to, but if you play it into space that's very awkward for the other team to deal with, their only play is to play it right back to you. So in essence, you're using a member of the other team as one of your teammates to force a bad touch out of them and then get possession back, when that's the only way you could have kept possession. There's a couple examples of this that I'll be able to show. But that's what I think the number one thing to look at while I'm letting the game roll is just how meaningful every touch here is. And this whole series, this whole tournament, I think in particular, Garrett really impressed me with a lot of the things he was doing. I mean, everyone in this series was phenomenal, but I think throughout the tournament, Garrett played really well. Justin played phenomenal in the finals, especially. And then Fire really rounds out that team. He's just a really smart, solid player, which since they all mesh so well, having Fire there to play it really intelligently on defense, get it to his teammates, start off plays is kind of what they need. And Dig, they can all really do it all. I think that's why they're so strong, is they're all very smart players. They all make intelligent, creative passes, and they can all play on all parts of the field. So they just have super, super smooth, solid rotations. And I want to get into the game soon, but one more thing I wanted to say is, as I was watching, even though, spoiler alert, NRG does lose the first set, and it's not that close, it's 4-1. The individual games are close, but the series isn't that close. And in spite of that, I felt that there were more particular plays from NRG that I was being drawn towards wanting to highlight. And there's still plenty on both sides that I want to talk about, but it really dawned on me towards the end of the series that I was saying, like, oh, look what NRG did here and here, but they didn't win. And I think that's because Dig is just so solid all the time. There's plays that, most teams might make that infield pass 50 to 60% of the time nowadays. And then Dig makes it like 90% of the time. So it's not anything special, but they do, it's nothing special enough for me to draw attention to it when it happens. But they do it so consistently and so soundly that they're just such a strong team. And that's not to say they don't have those special moments, because there's plenty of them. There's so much from this series that I want to talk about, but I just wanted to... Just something interesting I observed while going over this series. But I've been talking long enough. Let's get into it here. So pretty early on, we're going to see teams making slight mistakes to give a little bit of space to the other team, and then the other team doing a great job capitalizing. I think we'll see one from both teams here. So yeah, we're going to see K-Dop and Violent Panda do a little bit of a double commit. It was a good play by K-Dop, and then NRG will take their space, but then after Fire kind of messes up there, NRG's forced to rotate back, and then Violent Panda with a great pass to the midfield. Both these teams really know when to slow down the pace of the game and when it's going to help them out. And this is... this is... Actually, first, before I talk about that play into middle, this is how I want to... When I say that these teams do a very good job of playing it into positions that are awkward, a good example of this is right here, this pass into the midfield, and K-Dop could have gone for a shot, but Garrett's going to save that every time. So instead, K-Dop kind of lobs it up weirdly, which Garrett, it's slow, but Garrett has to be ready for a shot, so he's not able to really put that where he wants to, so then it funnels very naturally into Violent Panda, who's able to follow up. And that's something that I think is fairly intuitive, and it makes sense. Like, challenge it in a way to let your teammate follow up. You don't have to win the challenge. And I think everyone knows that. And when you think about it, it definitely makes sense. But people don't always do it. And these teams do it so consistently, and that's what really separates them. So right here, this is a great mechanical play by Justin, and this is kind of what you need to do sometimes to foil this sort of play, because what Turbo's trying to do here is hit it off the backboard. Justin's obviously capable of making this read. At this level, these players are all capable of making this read, but it's not somewhere where he seemingly has a lot of control. The obvious way to go about this play is to go up for the read, let it bounce off, and just hit it as far down the field as you can. And he doesn't have a teammate to follow that up. So if you were to hit this far downfield, this would just be a possession back to Dignitas, and they could slow it down and start something. But Justin approaches this pretty creatively. Instead of just clearing it downfield, he gets a very light touch and elegantly lands on the backboard and follows it up so quickly that Violent Panda can't even get to it in time. That mechanical play is much harder than it looks to be able to land that well on the backboard after kind of hitting it off a read like that. Very impressive. One thing I do want to talk about here, for anyone who watched my analysis of the regional finals, NRG versus G2, I mentioned how NRG was kind of having trouble with their challenge timings. They oftentimes would challenge when they don't have a teammate ready to follow up, and it would put them in very bad spots. And they did not have any trouble with that in this series. They did a great job with their challenges. This is an example of that. There's actually going to be 2 of them in a play. We're going to see Violent Panda with some space. Fire's going to wait just a little bit, and then he'll commit to the challenge. And now Garrett's in the perfect position to follow up. So NRG plays very well around the slow play, and is able to start a decent chance because of that. And now Violent Panda's going to be given space again. Garrett's going to deliberately give him space. And then he's going to loop back around here. Force Violent Panda to pop it in an awkward situation, and Fireburner is easily ready to follow up. So instead of making the quick challenge early and getting beat, and then Fireburner may have a chance to follow up, instead, he waits for a second on the challenge, turns around and comes back in, and now Fire's ready for the follow-up. And this gives them yet another opportunity early in this game off a good 50 from Fire. Garrett's just kind of slightly going to miss this shot. He tried to aim it well, but Fire had the bump, so it wasn't necessary. But early in the game, it's really been NRG here with all the chances. This is another just phenomenal play. Look at this. So Garrett makes the challenge in a way that it comes off the wall and back towards his teammate. This buys a ton of space for his team. So Justin's able to beat Turbo Pulsa. And then Garrett, lurking upfield, is going to get a beautiful touch around K-Dop. And now Justin's ever so slightly going to mess up this pass. I'm pretty sure he was trying to roll it along the ground, but unfortunately, he gets there just after the bounce, so it pops up. If he had gotten there even a 10th of a second, probably even less than that earlier, then that would have been a beautiful pass out to Garrett and probably a goal. So here, we're going to see Fire try to be a nuisance in goal. He's going to go in for some bumps, make Turbo Pulsa swerve out of the way, and Violent Panda. And you'd think this is pretty difficult to punish. Now Justin coming in for the shot. But K-Dop has other ideas. He actually recognizes that Fire's overextended for that demo and gets the demo back. And this presents probably the best opportunity that Dig has had this whole game. So, I do think, watching the early part of this game, it felt like it was all NRG, and honestly, through like the first 2 games, it sort of feels that NRG had a bit of an upper hand, I'd say, but that turns around. So, right here, Justin kind of rushes this. Violent Panda challenges it, so Justin feels obligated to go up, and then he goes down. So this pretty smart challenge by Violent Panda. Unfortunately, K-Dop kind of... I think that's a pretty hasty hit coming out from him. He had plenty of time to set up something a little better than that. I think, yeah, this game a little bit slow for the game 1. Not a whole lot of chances. There are some decent ones from NRG, but this will go to overtime. It's a 0-0 game. What was I going to say? Oh, sorry. So right here, actually, I'll let it play out once. So when I first saw this seemed like a pretty poor touch from Justin. He just hits it off the ceiling right to Violent Panda. But when you really look at it, this is really due to Turbo. Turbo comes in for the bump on Justin and forces him to swerve around to the side. If Justin took his intended route, he would have been up on the wall probably right around here, and he would have had a lot of freedom to do whatever he wanted with the ball. but because Turbo kind of interfered with him, not only does that mean that Justin's not in the right spot, but now Turbo's also coming off of the wall, making a challenge. So Justin doesn't have time to come at it extremely slowly. And so he's pretty much forced to give away possession. Very smart play by Turbo there. This is a great infield pass, but this is also fantastic awareness by Fireburner to contest it. K-Dop leaves it pretty ambiguous. It looks like he can go for the shot or the pass, but Fire doesn't care because he knows he has teammates defending the shot. His only responsibility here is to defend the pass, and he does so very well. That's a pretty big theme throughout this series. Both teams do a pretty good job creating passing plays, but both teams also do a fantastic job shutting them down. This is the best I've ever seen, for sure, in terms of intercepting the passing plays by both teams in this series. This right here is a phenomenal touch by Turbo. He has so much momentum coming this way. I actually want to go on his player cam for this one. This is not an easy touch. He has to get to the ball before his opponent, so he has to have a lot of momentum going in for it. And then he gets the flip and hits it off such an awkward part of the backboard. Justin's barely able to get there in time, but that's something else by Turbo. He's extremely good at that kind of touch. Those redirect plays. This is a very good passing play. Down from K-Dop towards Turbo. And we actually see this is a very good job by Garrett to contest this. This is not an obvious pass, but Garrett, he does his job on the rotation here. We see he cuts his rotation early. This is actually another thing I wanted to talk about, because we'll see it a few times this series. So Garrett here, traditionally, in the old school, I've talked about this a little bit, in the older school rotations, Season 2, Season 3, it was pretty straightforward how teams would rotate. There was a very methodical rotation style. One player would contest the ball. The second player, in this case Fireburner, would go and back him up. And then Garrett, the third man in the rotation, would come around to the back post. Then the player went for the ball, would come around to the back post, rinse and repeat. But now, with how well teams are doing with passing plays, you have to change it up a little bit. So Garrett recognizes Fire is turned around. He's not in a position to go challenge a pass. So that means it's now Garrett's job. So Garrett cuts his rotation in a little bit early, recognizing that K-Dop has this window for a pass. And while he doesn't quite get anything on it, Turbo Pulsa doesn't have as much free reign. If Garrett had rotated the back post, Turbo Pulsa would have had all day to place a shot on net here, and I'm sure he would have scored it. But because Garrett cut his rotation properly, the shot is savable. Very good awareness by K-Dop and very precise pass to allow Turbo to even get there before Garrett. But also a good job by Garrett to make sure that his teammates had at least a chance on the save. We'll see both teams do quite a good job with that cutting rotations to defend the pass, because it's absolutely necessary in the current meta if you want to be one of the top teams. And it will continue to be as time goes on, I'm sure. It's only going to be more important. Here, we're going to see a pretty poor 50-50 from Turbo Pulsa, but Dignitas stays remarkably composed. K-Dop's going to make a nice solid read here. Not an easy read, but he gets a good touch on it. And Turbo, going to turn, not rush anything, just get just the right touch so that it goes very harmlessly off the wall. And Garrett can't do a whole lot with it. After that bad 50-50, it seemed pretty problematic, but yeah. See a sentiment in chat that NRG and Dig were at such a higher level than everyone else in this LAN, and I definitely agree with that. I mean, this final series, I don't think the other teams played bad, but these two teams really showed up, and they were absolutely dominant. Remarkable levels of play that we saw out of these two teams. And we'll see it throughout this series, and we'll see it next week when I do the second set of this series. Very good stuff. So this game, it was a 0-0 overtime, but it's going to get wrapped up here. Garrett, he doesn't have a huge window for how to make this clear. He knows Turbo's right behind him, or at least he can suspect that. So he has to get there, and he has to try and make it as awkward as possible for the other team. And he can't really get around the ball to play to the open space on the right side of his goal here. So he has to play it over to the left side. And he seemingly does a great job of making it awkward, but this is just incredible control by Violent Panda. He goes up, touches it so elegantly off the ceiling, and then comes in and doesn't quite get the double tap, actually, but puts it in an awkward enough position that there's no way NRG is defending this. So I think Garrett did a good job with what he was given there, but Violent Panda did a better job. Phenomenal control. And that's, I think throughout this series, most of the goals we see are, there may have been some mistake coming out from the defense, but they didn't make it easy for the offense. The offense really has to come in and make some plays. So let's get right into Game 2 here. I don't have quite as many notes here for Game 2 as I did for Game 1. And I think a lot of that is because some of the things I mentioned early... Well, hang on here. This right here is a very good pass by Justin, and then again, very good anticipation by Turbo Pulsa. This is not the best hit by Justin here. He kind of hits it right to Turbo Pulsa. This first one is a bit hasty. He calls off Garrett and then doesn't do a whole lot with it. But then, this is a pretty awkward bounce, and it's tough to do much with it. And the instinct is just to try and get under it and play it back in however possible, usually kind of off the corner here. I think, at least my instinct here would be, well, it's tough to do much with it here. I'll just try and take it off the bounce and hit it awkwardly off this little corner area of the wall here. But Justin has a better idea. Let me go back to his player view here. He knows it's bouncing out, so he's going to wait till it comes back around and then hit it infield for Garrett. But Turbo completely recognizes this, and he's already on top of it. And then a good dunk from Violent Panda almost leads to a goal the other way. So again, just high-level play from both sides. Super impressive. But as I was saying, I found myself, as the series was going on, with not quite as much to say at some times, because some of the stuff I highlighted in the first game was like the rotations, how these teams are doing such a good job playing passes. And they do it so often and so consistently that I can't highlight it every time it happens. So since these teams are so solid, a lot of times we kind of take it for granted and it starts feeling normal just watching this series, even though it would be something to note with some other teams playing. So that's why at times you may see a pretty solid play that I'm not even bringing up because there's just so much of it. So here, this from KDOT is a fantastic solo play which almost leads to a goal. He hits it extremely powerfully, which he needs to do to prevent Justin from being able to clear it off the backboard, and does an absolutely great job reading it, almost puts it in, but can't quite get the follow-up. That's another one of those plays that just... It's a tough read, and it's tough mechanically to pull off. Just very impressive. A little bit of corner action there. These teams do not make it easy to find openings. Here we're actually going to see Garrett make a pretty strong end-to-end play. He's not going to get the best clear up the corner here. It's going to go back out to the other team. But he recognizes very quickly that it was misread by KDOP, so he slows down a little bit, just enough to intercept this bad touch. Now, I want to highlight the whole movement on this play, and this is one of the best goals that was scored this whole LAN. He dodges perfectly so that he grabs the boost, can start boosting in midair, and land on the wall to get away from KDOP, not only stealing his boost, but ensuring he can't get demoed. And now, he's going to make a challenge here, which, if he weren't to get bumped, after making this challenge, his car would rotate back and he could land on the wall, allowing for a quick recovery. But he does get bumped. Whoops, I should slow this one down. He gets bumped, and he reacts so quickly, boosts towards the ceiling, lands on it, jumps down almost immediately, and puts it in. A little bit fortunate on the bump, yes, but he took it end to end, reading the play really well, moving really well down the field, and scored one of the best goals I've ever seen. That was... I couldn't even believe it when I saw that. So earlier I mentioned that teams will use the other team to their advantage and hit it somewhere where they can follow up. And this by Fireburner is a great example of that. So he's going to play it downfield here. He sees Violet Panda, and he's on the right side of the ball. He can't really make a play to mid, and, you know, Justin's in the back corner anyway. So he can't really get it to a teammate, and he can't really make a play on net either. So the only thing he can really do is make it awkward for the other team and try and get possession back as a result. And that's exactly what he does. He hits it over to the left side, so it's going to bounce strangely off the corner. And now Violent Panda doesn't have a whole lot to do with it other than play it up the wall. And Fireburner is way ahead of him on that. He knows that Violent Panda is forced to play it off the wall, and he comes in, reacts to it, and plays a pass towards mid. Which again, the pass was well defended. We're going to see a lot of that this series, but that was one of the prime examples of this series of how these teams can use the other team to their advantage by playing it into awkward spots. They're doing that constantly, but sometimes it's not quite as apparent of an example. And coming up soon here, we're going to see Dignitas kick off the scoring. A good dunk by KDOP there. Violent Panda's going to force Fireburner to hit it. Even though he didn't have a great play on it, he challenged the ball so Fireburner would be forced to try and play it. Then when it comes back out, KDOP makes a very nice quick pass out to mid. You know, this window's not going to be open for long. Garrett's ready to cut in and try and prevent some longer pass, but this is just a quick passing play with a fantastic shot at the end of it. Solid play. Just super clean. Clinical by Dignitas. This is dangerous from Justin, but wasn't quite able to get the double tap read. That is a very difficult read to make off the corner like that, especially when you're flying at it for a double touch, because when you're making the jump, you have a lot of options with how you want to approach the ball, but when you're going for a double tap, you really only have one option. And sometimes that option is not one that makes the read convenient at all for you. Right here, we're going to see Justin push up a little too far. He has a bit too much faith in this 50-50 from Fireburner, but he does a pretty good job correcting himself here. He's going to get a nice touch into the corner there, which on first glance, it doesn't look like it did that much. It didn't seem to put it super safely into the corner. But what it does is it removes an option. If Justin weren't here, then Turbopulsa would have the option of 1, shooting towards goal or towards backboard, and 2, cutting it around it and playing it back mid towards Violent Panda. And NRG is not ready to cover an infield pass here. But by Justin touching it, Turbo no longer has this option of passing it to mid, so he's forced to try and make the play off the backboard. And now since Garrett only has to defend one option rather than having to respect the pass, he's able to come in and clean that up. So even though Justin's touch didn't take away all of Turbo's options, it prevented him from having a choice, which allowed it to be much easier defended. It was more of a one-on-one situation after that rather than a two-on-one. So one more thing I want to talk about right here. I've reviewed Dignitas before when they were under Gale Force, the Gale Force organization, and one of the things that really stuck out to me about their games is they were not making challenges super early. They would give the other team space and force the other team to make that extra pass, that extra play in their own end, because they would really clamp down on the passing play once it got closer to their goal. But around midfield, they weren't too worried. They knew they could save it. But NRG is the kind of team that can put together those multi-pass passing plays. They're not going to pull the trigger too early. They're going to make that one extra heady pass. And so this tactic probably isn't going to work. At least not all the time like it does against other teams. NRG has the presence of mind to beat that and take advantage of that. And we don't see Gale Force or Dignitas giving NRG that kind of space in this series. And right here is a good example of that. We're going to see, normally here, with Justin making this play, Dignitas would just get back, they would let something happen, and then once it got close enough to their own end, they would make a challenge. But NRG is a very threatening team. So KDOP is lurking here, and he makes the challenge extremely early at midfield. It's a very good read by him, but it's also not the kind of read that I think they normally would have been trying to make against a lot of other teams. It's also possible their playstyle has just adapted more since then, but it's a pretty marked difference from what we've seen earlier in the season from them. And this, a lot of space was given here because Justin kind of awkwardly floats that in. And this is kind of a mix-up, actually. I think I mentioned that they were making those challenges more at midfield, but here Turbo realizes he's not going to win. He just kind of drives in to make sure Justin still decides to go for the ball. And then Justin doesn't have a great hit, and is forced to kind of just pop it up because he feels like he needs to beat Turbo Pulsa. And now Dignitas is able to start a play. Violent Panda probably wouldn't have been necessary here because Garrett wasn't quite ready to make this read, but he deflects it off here, which makes it bounce out a little bit. So if Garrett were ready for this straight down read, and he was sitting right under the ball, KDOP still could have scored this. Very nice little touch by Violent Panda, hitting it before it even has the opportunity to score, to deter any would-be defenders. So pretty soon here, we're going to see another pretty clear clinical example of what I was talking about earlier, which is how the defensive rotations have changed to defend passes. And we're going to see that very clearly here from Turbo Pulsa. You know, back in the old, what's the right term? Back in the old school of thought in terms of rotations, KDOP would come in for the challenge here to follow up Violent Panda, and Turbo Pulsa would rotate to the back post to prevent any shots. But nowadays, Fireburner is a lot of the time going to make this infield pass to Garrett. So rather than rotating to back post, Turbo comes infield very hard and plays this pass. Now, he may have come in a little bit too strong to the midfield, but it was definitely the right play here, and it's also very possible that Garrett goes farther out in this pass. Or Garrett goes closer in, excuse me. Like we saw the first goal from Dignitas, they had a very close-range passing play. And I think that's what Turbo is expecting here. Instead, Garrett goes a little bit farther out and Fire plays it over to him. But Turbo's still there to make the challenge and get a little bit in Garrett's way. Now, this does lead to problems because Dignitas kind of all pre-jumped this, and so after it makes a weird deflection off Violent Panda, it's a goal. But Turbo Pulso did a very good job with his defensive rotation there to at least make a contest on the pass. And that's one of the clearest examples I've seen of cutting in the rotation to defend the pass. Now this right here, it's a pretty bad double commit from Dignitas. They're both going to go for this one. But also, credit to Justin here. He's going to go up, and when you see two players double commit like this, the instinct is just to try and hit it as hard as you can towards the other net. But Justin knows if Fire has a chance at a shot here, he's never going to miss it. So Justin just plays it nice and soft over to the right. And Fire scores the easy goal. So suddenly, NRG has taken the lead. And not going to be too many scares for them in the remainder of this game. So it's going to be NRG tying it up 1-1 here. And like I had said in game 1, it did feel like the first half of the game really belonged to them. So at this point, NRG's got to be feeling pretty decent about their chances. And honestly, even though they do lose the next 3 games to drop this first set, I don't even feel like they play too bad. I wanted to go into this and say, okay, why did NRG only take 1 game in the first series, and then they came so close to winning a game 7 in the second series? What did they change? What did they do differently? But honestly, Dignitas just makes a lot of plays. There will be a couple iffy things from NRG that I point out, but I was having trouble identifying any thematic recurring mistakes they were making because they were still playing pretty well throughout this series. Dignitas was just playing even better. And that's the beauty of these really high-level series. It's not like, oh, this team just played terrible. There are things they could have done better, and Rocket League's a game where you have to make so many fast decisions. There's going to be mistakes being made constantly, but it's just a really phenomenal series. I don't know how else to say it. So let me load up the next game here. Oh, I remembered to scroll down in my notes. I'm getting better at this. I think that's 2 shows in a row where I remembered a new record. So here we go. I also remembered to get water. That's another thing I'm proud of. I actually have 2 cups of water here. This is the first time I've actually brought more than 1, because it turns out 1 doesn't cut it when I'm talking for like an hour and a half straight. Anyway. Here we go. I probably should have done this before I went back into the game. But hey, no one's perfect. So right here, right off the bat, we're going to see Justin with a bit of style. He's going to get this dunk off the ceiling. So I think he wasn't initially planning to hit it this as hard as he did here, but because the contest was coming in, he had to make sure he won to the ball. So he hits it pretty hard, then lands on the ceiling and comes down, gets the dunk. Doesn't go quite where he wanted, but if that had gone a little bit closer to the ground and a little slower for Fire, that actually could have been quite the play. The early goings of this game are going to go a little back and forth. I didn't come up with too much to highlight because, again, there are some periods of time where these teams are just playing super solid, but they're not going the extra mile that's required to score a goal when the other team's defense is also so solid. They're making smart plays and fairly low-risk plays that have reasonable chance of payout, but they're not those above and beyond plays that only come out once or twice per game. So this, I don't really mean to portray this as a negative thing too much, but this is an example of how playing it into an awkward position for your opponent can be ineffective. Garrett hits it high and back on the backboard, And this means that since Kalop was turned around, he's not really able to take this off the bounce. If Kalop was this way, facing forward, he could have driven up the wall and settled this. But Garrett recognized that Kalop was turned around in net here, so he played a nice lob. And this buys a lot of time, because not only does it reach the wall slowly, Kalop's still not really prepared to go up the wall for it. But unfortunately, since no one's ready to follow up on the pressure, Kalop has no problem just waiting for it to bounce off the wall and then starting a play. So while it did do a good job buying time for his team, it didn't really have the payout that you sometimes get from playing it into those awkward situations. And then this, because they have this time, since Garrett effectively gave away possession, he was going to give away possession either way because he didn't have a great play on the ball, but because he hit it slow enough that Kalop had time to settle it, Turbo Pulsa would have gotten to this ball first, so Justin went up for the dunk. Because Turbo Pulsa missed, the dunk never came, so Justin got kind of a bad hit. And then this creates even more time for Dignitas. Violent Panda hits a nice lob up, because he realizes that Fireburner is too close, a little bit too close to deal with this. And now he goes up, and he does a great job waiting for a big first touch. Since he's seen that Garrett has not yet challenged, he takes a big first touch because Garrett still can't get there, which means the ball is going dangerously close to the goal. So Garrett's now forced to challenge from kind of far away, and Violent Panda boosts to the ball to get another pretty big touch. And we're going to see a couple of air dribble goals here, which we don't usually see. So I wanted to take the time here to talk a little bit about air dribbles and why they've sort of fallen off in effectiveness since Season 1 and Season 2 days, but why they can also still be viable, and what is the difference between a good and a bad application of an air dribble. Whoops. So here, since Violent Panda has some time, Fireburner just missed the challenge, so he can safely assume Garrett isn't immediately ready for a follow-up, because Garrett can kind of at least thinks there's a decent chance Fireburner is going to get there. So he takes a big first touch. If you take a small first touch, then you're not able to hit it hard, you're just able to hit it more times and carry it. But that's easier to defend. However, this would have been easier to defend if there was a defender already up ready to make a challenge. It's just one touch, and he's not immediately able to follow up. However, Garrett isn't right on the ball, so Violent Panda can afford to make this bigger first touch and still get there again before Garrett. And since his first touch was bigger, his second touch is also bigger, since he has more room to close and more room to build momentum. And because he's able to get 2 bigger touches rather than a bunch of smaller touches, he's able to beat Garrett. If he had taken that slowly, Garrett would have just been able to challenge that as he would a normal air dribble. He had the positioning for that. It's a little bit less obvious what I'm talking about there, but there will also be another pretty good example of both a good and bad air dribble in this series. So I'll talk about that when we get there. Okay, so right here, it's going to go into the corner, and I just wanted to show, if you ever have the ball in the corner and there's someone challenging, just do exactly what Justin does here. He takes a little bit of a soft touch and dodges in a way that puts him right back on the wall, so Turbo Pulsa, who is challenging him, now can't get there, and Justin can follow it up. And he takes it well out of the corner. They didn't quite get the pinch here. And then he's in control the whole way here. Let me do this from his perspective. This is the kind of thing that you really learn from free play, I think, is the ability to follow up your own touches, hit it into places where you can follow up. I think that's a useful point to talk about too. A lot of people, they say, is free play really useful, and shouldn't I just be doing custom training? And a lot of the time you should, because custom training allows you to create more specific scenarios. You can't really practice redirects in free play. But custom training doesn't teach you this kind of thing, where it's just, how can I hit it to myself over and over and keep control and set myself up for these plays? So that's why I think some of both is valuable, and just when you're in free play, just try and do a bunch of new stuff. Just try and figure out what works. Don't just copy people. Try and figure out why things work, why they don't work, when you can follow up, when you can't. Right here, there's going to be a lot of space given. Justin and Garrett are both going back. I don't know if they miscommunicated their rotations here, but someone needs to be challenging this earlier, even without boost. That's just way too dangerous of a play. It's better to throw yourself in front of that with no boost than get some boost and not be able to defend it. So this is going to be a goal here for NRG. Violent Panda kind of awkwardly misreads that bounce, and that's probably what primarily leads to the goal. But I do want to note that this is a great job getting it out of the defensive zone by NRG. Garrett especially. He's going to recognize that Justin's making a rotation back to the left side, and he's going to hit a nice lateral clear. And Justin does a great job playing it around Turbo Pulsa. And then, also, this is another application of hitting it somewhere that's awkward for your opponents. The easiest way for Justin to beat Turbo Pulsa is to just hit the ball towards the middle of the field here. But that wouldn't be good, because Fireburner's rotating back, he won't be able to get to the redirect, and Violent Panda is going to be back in his net around that time. So if Justin were to make the easy play around Turbo Pulsa and just smack it down mid, Violent Panda would take possession. So instead, he recognizes he has enough time to beat Turbo Pulsa with a play towards the wall. And because of that recognition, Violent Panda has kind of an awkward scenario here, and then after he misreads the bounce, it leads to a goal. Not going to be a goal most of the time, obviously. That was a strange bounce, and a player of Violent Panda's caliber is usually going to read that regardless, but even if Violent Panda had read the bounce, NRG would have been much better off than if Justin just made the quick, ball-chasey, hit it out right towards mid play. When I saw this, when I was reviewing the replay and I watched this, I muttered to myself, what? Fire somehow here. He comes back and gets the demo, and then immediately comes up the wall to perfectly play it down to Garrett. When I saw that from third person, I thought there's no way Fire meant to hit it down to Garrett like that, but watching it from his point of view, I think he did. That's very quick decision making and very great job playing under a quick, high-pressure situation. Oh, sorry, I missed something here. And I wasn't really sure if I should talk about this, but because this isn't a particularly good play here by KDOP, he goes up and he sets the ball up. There's no one here to follow up. But I thought the fact that he even approached the situation like this really shows the difference in mentality between these two teams and some of the other teams. I think the general player's thought process here would be, oh, they kind of messed up. I don't have a clear pass to make here. I'm just going to slam it off the backboard for my teammate. But KDOP is the kind of player who doesn't want to be making touches that don't have an express purpose. So he kind of buys some time, and he wants to figure out if there's anything he can do with it, any way to set it up for his teammate. Unfortunately, there's not. Turbo Pulse is very far back there. But the fact that he doesn't even dodge into this ball once he gets there, he makes the double jump. It just kind of showed me the difference in mentality there. And I think that's part of what makes them so successful. It's not always going to turn out well, but it shows that he's really thinking about his hits. And then right here, this really impressed me. So K-Dop right here he does not take the most direct path towards the ball. The most direct path would just be going straight for it and hitting it down to turbo. And when I first saw this, I thought, oh, maybe he just didn't quite hit it the way he wanted. But K-Dop's too good of a player for that. I'm pretty sure he has no problem hitting that down every time. He knows that Garrett is also up. And he doesn't know exactly where Garrett is. So let's take a look at what happened here in slow motion. And let's think about what K-Dop's thought process is here. So he doesn't know exactly where Garrett is. And let's imagine Garrett is slightly going to beat him to the ball. If he were to go straight for the ball, then they would have pinched the ball right about here. Again, in a hypothetical situation where Garrett's a little bit closer than K-Dop thinks, because K-Dop can't see Garrett. So if Garrett were a little closer, they would have pinched the ball from about this angle, and it would have shot down towards the corner there, where no one on his team could have followed up, and potentially create a pretty dangerous play. Since K-Dop doesn't know exactly where Garrett is, he actually just goes in for the dunk here, and for a little bit of a weak hit if Garrett isn't actually hitting the ball. And this turns out a lot better. If Garrett were a little bit closer to the ball, Garrett may have just won outright, and Violet Panda could have easily scooped it up. But since Garrett was a little farther back, K-Dop instead gets the dunk, and this turns out pretty well for them. At least in terms of immediate result. Very mindful play there. I think. It is possible he just slightly missed it, but I think it was a deliberate play. So now NRG is going to concede here. So Garrett here is trying to play it somewhere with purpose. He's trying to set up Fireburner, I believe, but Violent Panda's all over that. And not only is he all over it, he has the presence of mind to beat Fireburner while getting around the ball and pass it over to K-Dop. If he just shot this is probably saved. But he realizes that even getting around the ball, he can still beat Fire, and makes just a gorgeous pass. Both of these teams are so good at that, making that last pass in front of net when it's necessary. Because I've noticed, especially with teams like Cloud9, that in that kind of situation, a lot of times they'll be like, if I hit the perfect shot here, it's going to be a goal. And they're right. If they hit a perfect upper 90 shot there, it's going to be a goal. But that's difficult. I mean, the pass is pretty difficult too, but it's a higher percentage play. And so to have the presence of mind to make that pass, even when you have a decent shot and you feel like, I've been practicing this shot, I've been practicing in custom training like all day for the past year, and you want to feel like you can hit that shot. If I'm really on my game, I can hit that shot. But to have the presence of mind to say, okay, I could hit that shot, but my teammate can hit that even easier shot. That's something that both of these teams are very good at. And we'll see NRG do the same thing later on. So now, Game 3, a little bit of a lead, but it is still 1-1 in the series, so no time to get drastic for either team. So this is one of the biggest examples I've seen. Oh, I was not on the game. Yeah, my bad. I didn't have a whole lot to say, luckily. But my bad about that. I've been getting better about that, but I still leave it occasionally. I need to do a better job of keeping that second monitor cam on my peripherals. But so right here, we're going to see K-Dop cheat super, super hard over to the left side. And again, it goes back to these teams playing it into awkward situations for each other. Turbo Pulsa here is going to play the ball towards the left side of Justin. And the goal here is that Justin only has one option, which is to clear it over to this side of the field. And K-Dop is keen on this plan. So, as he sees it develop, as soon as he sees Turbo Pulsa start to go up for it, he cheats over towards this side of the field. But Justin can see this. Justin sees K-Dop cheating over to that side, and he makes the compensation and comes around it and hits it back out to mid. So K-Dop now has completely given up possession. He does make a good dunk there, but when I first saw this play, I looked at it and I thought to myself, how on earth is there this much space in the middle of the field? What was K-Dop doing? But it's just these teams make these reads on each other and play it trying to funnel the play over to one side of the field, and that's exactly what this was. Dignitas was attempting to funnel this play over to the left side of the field, but NRG recognized what was happening, and Justin made the play to prevent it. So now, after all is said and done, it's 2-1 in Game 3. So it is best of 7. There's plenty of time to go in the series, but Dignitas has now taken the lead back. And again, it was a close game. All these games have been close so far. They've all been one-goal games. And the next two are going to be two-goal games, not one-goal games, but they're still close. Both teams have a lot of chances, and both teams play pretty solid. Dig just makes the plays. They make it happen. Why do I always go back in while it's still loading? Whew. Okay. Anyway. So, one of the things I was trying to attribute, where exactly was NRG going wrong? What could they have been doing better? I still think they were playing pretty well, but I did notice there were a lot of relatively minor double commits like this one, where, okay, it's not the end of the world, the double commit there, and if you're really worried about something happening, I'd say it's even acceptable, but there wasn't a whole lot of pressure there, so there wasn't a whole lot of need to go for a double commit. And it's that kind of thing that concerned me. We'll see a little bit more of that as the series goes on. Not a whole lot, but yeah. There wasn't a whole lot I could identify. So here, we're going to see Turbo do a great job going in transition from the defensive end to the offensive end. He's going to get a nice pop there, and then he's going to slow it down. He goes up the wall, which means Garrett can't challenge, because if Garrett challenges, he'll just fly off the wall and hit it. But since Garrett backs up, knowing he can't challenge, Turbo then slows it back down and comes around it. He doesn't quite get the catch he wants, so the pinch doesn't go the way they want, but a very good job taking it downfield there. And now, we're going to see a pretty heads-up play by Turbo here. He demos Garrett after realizing that he's not really going to be able to get to this pass. So he's there waiting for the pass. It's pretty hard. And then it's over to the side. He gets the demo. And that puts Fireburner in a pretty tough spot. His only teammate is now... Where even is he? Yeah, he's still floating down the middle. And so what's Fireburner to do here? His teammate just got demoed. His other teammate's completely out of the play. He has to find a way to buy a ton of time here. And the ball's going extremely fast. So he tries to get up to it and hit it down off the lip or something. Doesn't quite get there in time. And so it ends up getting scored on. It looks like a pretty blatant pass from Fire to Dignitas, but there wasn't a whole lot he could have done. And he had to react very quickly to that demo. He didn't have much time to think about what the proper way to approach it was. This is going to be a pretty well-orchestrated, or almost well-orchestrated passing play by NRG. We're going to see Fireburner have the presence of mind. He sees Violent Panic coming in for the challenge. So he pops it way over to the side to Justin. And I think what Justin is going for here is to hit it almost straight up, a little bit towards Garrett, so that it would bounce off of the ceiling. Oh, let me illustrate what I mean by that. I think he wanted it to go roughly like this off the ceiling and then come back down to right around here on the field. Maybe a little bit farther up like that. And then Garrett would be able to, maybe throw it off the backboard so Fireburner could follow it or something. Just take control, because no one's really ready for that. K-Dap's starting to turn to challenge it, but unfortunately, he doesn't get quite the hit he wants, I think. And he plays it pretty far forward. But it was pretty well set up overall. And then Garrett, he's going to pop it just enough that K-Dap has to do something about it. So it's in a dangerous spot. K-Dap has to go for this ball now, but he doesn't really have a good hit on it. And he really hits the sweet spot there, because if he were to play it too far to the right, then it's not dangerous, so K-Dap doesn't have to go for the ball. But if he plays it too close to net, then K-Dap can clear it to the corner. But he pops it out just far enough that K-Dap can't get around it to play it to the corner, but it's still dangerous enough that he has to go for it, so his only way to hit it is right to Justin. And Garrett also gets the bump after flicking it onto Violent Panda. Very well set up by Garrett, hitting it into pretty much exactly the hardest place for K-Dap to deal with. So here, I think we're going to see another sort of double commit. But it's a little different this time. But we see Garrett and Justin both thinking they need to come out for the play. They're both kind of covering the pass. And I think either player has a claim for being the one to follow the pass, but the fact that both of them went for it is a problem. Garrett's trying to play the closer pass to Turbo, and then Justin wants to try and defend any cross-field passes. But that really leaves a hole open in the net. I don't know how they usually communicate this, and it's a pretty hard thing to do on the fly. It's really a chemistry kind of thing, just knowing how your teammates play, and this is kind of a tough situation to even have that. But either way, they barely keep it out, but that creates a pretty good chance for Dignitas. And that's just another example of NRG sort of double committing, not super blatantly, but doing a little bit of double committing for the same thing. And that's the only thing I could really find that seemed worrisome. This right here, I actually, the more I looked at this, the more I wanted to talk about this. So the play Justin does here is a good one. It's a very strong solo play. It's another one of those free play kind of plays where he says, I don't really have a teammate to hit it to. How can I hit it somewhere where I can follow up? And he does a good job. Hits it off a part of the wall that he can easily follow up and get a pretty good hit. But Turbo pulses all over it. This is a phenomenal read by Turbo. He comes back around. As he's rotating back, he sees what Justin's going for. He knows Justin's very good at these solo plays. And he goes up knowing exactly what Justin's planning to do. I mean, think about this. If Justin wasn't going for a second hit, there's no reason for Turbo to go for this. If Justin just left it here, Turbo should let a teammate go for this. But he knows exactly what Justin's doing and goes up to perfectly stop it. So right here, I mentioned this earlier. I alluded to when I analyzed NRG versus G2, and I found that one of the biggest problems they were having was their challenge timing and challenging things too early. And this was such a clear example of them having done a better job of that in this series. So what Justin does here is he starts to move forward, but then he realizes, hang on, Fireburner is not in a position to follow up on my challenge. Fireburner is still rotating back. So what does he do? He puts on the brakes, and he makes sure that Violent Panda can't slow play him and go for a dribble play that gets it over him. Because the only real dangerous thing here, Fireburner is going to be back in time for some, like, shot or just them throwing it downfield. What Justin needs to worry about here is Violent Panda popping it over him and then following up for another hit, or KDOP getting a redirect. So what Justin does is he cuts that off, makes sure Violent Panda is going for kind of a higher play or something along those lines. And then that's fine. Fireburner is able to scoop it up. The NRG doing a much better job of that in this series. Right here is a pretty hasty clear by Fireburner. I thought at first that he just didn't have any idea that no one was challenging this ball, but I feel like he could see enough that this really shouldn't be happening. It is a pretty panic-inducing situation, but he's heard one player go over to the left. He knows there's not too much pressure here. And he kind of just throws it away. Very uncharacteristic. Fireburner is usually one of the best at not doing that, but unfortunately it does end up leading to a goal. And this again is sort of a double commit. They're not going for the same ball, but they both kind of preemptively go up this right wall, both Fireburner and Justin. And they were right that that's how Violent Panda wanted to play it, but it leads to a kind of wonky bounce off the side, and Justin's not able to get there, so they end up getting scored on. This one's not too bad, but it's still, you don't want to have two people on the same wall like that. That's just not doing an effective enough job controlling the space of the field. And then this air dribble. I mentioned we would see some more air dribble plays, and I wanted to talk about what makes air dribbles good and what makes them bad. And this is obviously a good one. And the reason for that is because no one was able to challenge early. What you want to be doing on an air dribble is you want to force a defender out in such a way that you can get it over them without them being able to get anything on the ball. And you also want to make it as dangerously close to the net as possible. And KDOP does a phenomenal job of that with this play. He's going to not only wait until someone challenges, but he's going to recognize that he has a ton of space. So he's going to move the ball as close to the net as possible before he begins the air dribble. So what we're going to see here, he gets a relatively strong first touch that he has to catch up to because there's no one who's able to challenge him before he gets there again. And now that Garrett's up, he has the window to start going for the air dribble. And since he got himself close enough to the goal, he's able to just put it in once he beats one defender. So that's a good air dribble because he's able to get it close to net, and there's no defender able to challenge the start of the air dribble. It was also masterfully executed, just absolute perfection on that air dribble, but that's what made the circumstances correct to go for as well. And later this game, we're going to see one that's not quite as good and why players have stopped going for them as frequently. Before that, I do want to point out, right here, we're going to see Violent Panda kind of just drive next to this one. And he has no intention of hitting this ball. He knows Turbo Pulse is going to be coming in for this. But if Fireburner tries to get too close to hitting the ball or, anything else Violent Panda has the option of playing this to the side. So what this does, it's essentially just insurance on this play. He can drive next to the ball until Turbo Pulse is ready to take it, and there's nothing Fireburner could have really done, even if he were a little bit closer. It's a tough thing to communicate that you're doing that and not actually planning to hit the ball, but if your teammates understand that, it's so powerful. So right here, K-Dop's going to go for another air dribble, and this time it's not quite as dangerous because NRG has a lot more of the net covered. They have someone on the ground, and they have someone preemptively on the wall, and he's already started carrying it while he's not quite in as dangerous of a position, so he's not able to get a great follow-up. And this leads to the problem with these air dribbles. They have pretty unpredictable results at the end. If they do get contested, they usually pinch off into some strange direction. Like here, it's hard to tell exactly where this is going to go right now, but you can tell it's not going to score. It could pinch off to either side, or it could just end up going downfield. The one place it's not going, unless Garrett just whiffs, is the net. And that's kind of what happens with these air dribbles, is the defender will 50-50 them, and they don't really care where it goes as long as it's not the net, because if it goes to the corner, it's safe. If it goes forward, it's going to be with a very unpredictable trajectory, so it can't really be read by the offense, so they're not going to be able to keep pressure. So if the air dribble fails, it tends to be good for the defense, and this is no exception. It goes pretty far downfield, and Justin has a great chance to put it in. Doesn't quite do so. But you can sort of see why air dribbles are so risky. Not only do you have to spend a lot of boost, if they don't work, they tend to not lead to much. They are very volatile, so occasionally it will lead to something good for the offense, but it's much more frequent that it'll be good for the defense. But since Justin couldn't capitalize, still a 2-0 game. And this one goes in the favor of Dignitas. So 3-1 in the series at this point. They only need one more to force a bracket reset. So now, NRG, they know they have another set after this, but no one wants to get the bracket reset. It does feel a little tough because it's just awful if you're, say you're down 3-1 in the first set, and then you bring it all the way back to 3-3, and then you end up losing in Game 7, and then you're all tired, you have to go into another set. It's tough, but I mean, the other team does too, so it's not like it necessarily benefits the team who's resetting to do that, but it's definitely soul-crushing as the team to start to be making a comeback and then have to go into the next set. So, NRG, they definitely like to bring it back here, but Dig definitely wants to close this out while they're on top of their game. And this game still does not disappoint. We've seen a lot of good goals this series, and we'll see some more in this game too. First thing I want to point out here, we're going to see Justin again. He's going to make a bit of an overcommittal, but he's going to recover fantastically again. After this weird high ball, he kind of misreads Violent Panda's position, so he jumps. Very quickly realizes that Panda's going to get to this one. But he recovers quickly enough to intercept the pass. And that's a pretty important play for him to have made there. That would have been trouble for NRG. And then K-Dop. This is such a good play by K-Dop. The whole way in the corner. He's going to recognize... So Garrett's trying to buy some time, and almost any other player in the game would feel like they have to beat Garrett here and just smash it around the side. And that's exactly what Garrett wants. But K-Dop very quickly recognizes Garrett's position, gets a nice little pop that just gets over Garrett, but is enough that he still has good control. And now Justin's just spawned. He doesn't have a great play on the ball. And then he gets the bump in net. Super solid by K-Dop. I do like the way Garrett approached this situation. I don't think that this was just a blatant pass to K-Dop. I think a lot of players would have played this wrong, and I like what he follows up with. Because he also covers a very slow play from K-Dop. What he does, he sees K-Dop get a nice soft touch, and he assumes he's trying to slow play, so he goes in for the bump. But K-Dop plays around everything here. He gets a nice pop over Garrett, and then jumps immediately so Garrett can't even bump him. So I think overall it was reasonably well played by Garrett on defense, but even more well played by K-Dop on offense. Ugh, I need more water. Ugh. I'm still not used to talking for this long, non-stop. Right here, Fireburner. It looks like kind of a lucky dunk, but I want you to think here. Where is the most dangerous place that Turbopulsa could put this ball? Justin's in net, ready for a shot. Probably ready for a backboard play too. He's very good at the reads. And Violent Panda's pretty far back. So Turbo could try and make a far pass to Violent Panda. But look how much space there is in the middle of the field here. The most dangerous place that Turbopulsa could hit it here would be right in the center, right around here. As close to the goal as possible, because Violent Panda has the space. Justin's not ready to challenge. So if Violent Panda can get as close to the net as possible before shooting it, then he'll have the best chance. And Turbopulsa has the option of playing it down to this area, because no one's going to be ready to challenge. Garrett can't get around from this side in time, and Justin isn't able to turn around. So Fireburner very quickly recognizes that that's the most dangerous place for Turbo to put it. Whoops. And he's going to boost himself into position to block that. He's going to boost just ever so slightly forward. And Turbo is going to try and put it exactly into that spot. This probably would have been a goal. This is a very good pass. Very direct, down to Violent Panda. The only way it wouldn't have scored, I think, is if it was a little bit too far forward, but it's very close to being exactly where he needed to get it. Yeah, that would have been perfect for Violent Panda there. And Justin would have had to make a pre-jump save. But Fireburner cuts off the angle that was most dangerous. Very, very intelligent play. Oh, I'm going to have to scroll down in my notes shortly here. Let me do that before I forget. Okay. Yeah. So, coming up soon, not quite yet, but we're going to see a very strong passing kind of chemistry play from NRG, where you can really tell they understand how each other play and how each other want to follow up. This ball is coming down, and Fireburner is going to put a high pass off of the wall. And Justin is so ready for it. Justin knows exactly that this is happening. Just watch this. Fireburner comes in, plays it off. Justin was already turning this way and starting to boost, and now he's already up for it. Now, admittedly, he doesn't do a great job with the shot here, but he puts it in an awkward enough position that both Turbo and Violent Panda think it's their ball. Probably should have been Violent Panda here. And that leads to a bad double commit. And now Garrett plays it off, and Fireburner doesn't go for the shot. Like I mentioned earlier, he has the presence of mind here to play it over to Garrett. Some more great chemistry from NRG. Just a very solid play overall. A bit of mistake too from Dignitas, but it's so tempting to go for that shot as Fireburner, because if you drop it in properly, he'll score, but it's much easier to just pass it to Garrett. Yeah, as referenced in Twitch chat, I do agree that the side pass off the wall, like Fireburn did there, is pretty underutilized. I think teams have gotten a lot better at it recently. We're seeing more of it, and I really like that. But it's an extremely strong option. It's just a pretty non-obvious option a lot of the time. So a lot of people aren't good at using it. So this is a lot of open space on the side of the field for K-Dop. Very good job of him by recognizing it and turning back around to sit in it. And great job by Violent Panda to find K-Dop there. And then also a very good angle. I did wonder why there was this much space open. And when I first saw this, I thought Garrett was extremely overcommitted to the side here. But the more I looked at it, I actually kind of like the idea there. I think he just committed slightly too hard to the side of the field. But what Garrett's trying to do here is he's trying to move over to the side to bait out a pass to K-Dop. You can see he moves to the side to create some space on the side, and he immediately starts turning. You can see he already knows a pass is coming here. He's already turning to the left because he's kind of blocking the shot angle. Violent Panda is not going to throw it off the backboard or anything. The pass is coming here, and Garrett knows it. But it's slightly harder than he anticipated, so he can't quite get up for it. I think it was pretty sneaky by him, and I think he was deliberately baiting out the pass. I think he just went slightly too far to the side for it to work out. This is crazy by Garrett. He almost gets the flip reset pass. You know, you see a lot of players go for the flip reset, and then they just tunnel on trying to shoot it over the defender, thinking they won't be ready for it. But he gets the flip reset, and then he comes around it, trying to get it to Justin. Unfortunately, it went a little bit too strong. But that's a setup. A lot of good stuff coming out of this series. And just a highly entertaining series of Rocket League. Really back and forth. Lots of good plays. It's really had it all. So right here, we're going to see Fire come up, get a 50-50. I believe Garrett was trying to pass it back to Fire, but it 50-50'd up pretty unexpectedly. So I think Garrett just couldn't get around it, and he kind of threw it on net. And Fireburner reacts very quickly to this, and bumps Turbo out of the way. Very, very nice play. Very heads-up play. It's easy to focus on the pass. Like, once you're in the mindset, you think there's a pass coming, you're focused on receiving the pass. And then you just try and force it. Or you might say, oh, I can't get there, I'm not going to try. But Fire changes plans very quickly, and goes for the bump. Very nice. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that even though Dig ends up winning this series 4-1, I still felt like I had more things that I was talking about with NRG. And I mentioned a reason for that being that Dig is just so solid, and they make the correct play so often that it's not even something to highlight because it's just what they do. They just make those infield passes when they should, make those plays out of the corner. And this is when I really realized that, like, Violent Panda comes in, has the composure, makes the heads-up play. After going in for the challenge, when he's rotating out, most players would either go back here or try and force him some play, but Violent Panda says, I'm closest to the ball, I can make the infield pass. It doesn't get anything off of it, but Dig makes this play so much more than most teams. They've realized that the corners don't really work, and a lot of other teams, I may have at least made a note of that. I probably wouldn't have paused play to talk about it, but I'd say, you know, nice play by Violent Panda here out of the corner. I would have left a note. But with Dig, it just felt natural, and that's when I started to realize that, like, they're just so solid that unless they do something really unique, then it probably doesn't stand out enough to me to highlight it. Nice little mid-air bump attempt by Violent Panda there. Wanted to get back at Fire, but unfortunately there's someone to back up NRG there. So right here, this is a lot of space, and I'm still... I don't really know whether to say this is miscommunication or an overcommittal, because if Garrett doesn't pinch this out, Fireburner can probably get a challenge. But at the same time, this probably is a bit of an overcommittal by Fire. Both of his teammates are very far up. So it is very risky to go for this. But if this doesn't pinch with Garrett, Fire can definitely get a challenge here and maybe a goal. So I don't really blame him for wanting to go for this. But I also don't blame Garrett for thinking that Fire's going to want to stay back with him and Justin so far up and just trying to make a challenge. So my instinct is to chalk this up to miscommunication, even though at first it looks like an overcommittal. Kind of a strange play there. And then Violent Panda does a phenomenal job capitalizing on it. This is just a perfect ceiling shot. Because of the overcommittal, no one's there to challenge the ceiling shot, so he can just flowchart this. Wait until someone challenges. Garrett challenges, now flip into the ball. Nothing the defense could have done after they overcommitted like that. Again here, this is... Dig is just all over the passing plays. We're going to see Garrett will take a nice first touch, gives himself a lot of options. He hit it just the right amount out. But notice what Turbo Pulsa does. He pre-jumps to contest this extremely early and prevents a lot of Garrett's options. The only option Garrett has that's not cut off is to infield pass, because Turbo's blocking off pretty much everything else. He'll get there pretty soon. So Garrett goes for the infield pass, but K-Dop knows that Turbo's cutting everything else off. So K-Dop knows the infield pass is coming, so he starts cheating up on it before it even comes. And he's all over it. Clinical job on defense there. And then the nail in the coffin in this series is going to be another miscommunication from NRG. They kind of both think each other has it. And they had to make something happen, being down a goal with 20 seconds. So they're both a little overeager to push the play forward, I guess. But it happens. I don't know why we see these plays come out once the team's already locked it up. They just start missing open nets and double committing, but in fairness here, they'll almost set up a pretty nutty play. Or they will set up a nutty play, but it'll be saved. But that'll do it. It was a 2-goal game, but it was basically a 1-goal game. The second goal in the gap only came because of a bit of over-aggression with little time left, and there was one other 2-goal game. The rest were 1-goal games. Very close series, despite being a 4-1. Very high-level series. And the only real difference maker I could see was that Dig made more of those plays that you need to beat defenses who are set up well. If both defenses are playing well, you have to make those perfect air dribbles, those perfect ceiling shots, those perfect passing plays with really direct, precise passes. You have to have some way of beating the defense that's more than just playing solid and waiting out a mistake. And NRG did have a little bit of overlap at times, but just that was the difference maker. But it's not. I don't want to harp on NRG for that, because they did play a very good series. Still, this was definitely the highest level series I've analyzed on this show, and the highest level I've seen, probably in general, excluding maybe the second set that comes right after this. I will have to make a judgment on that after I watch it, or I've watched it after I go through it more thoroughly. So yeah, now's the time for any questions for people in chat. I did see someone ask about it earlier. I do try and save the questions till the end unless I have something specific to talk about with chat. because I don't want it to feel like you miss out on too much if you're not watching live. Why do I think fakes are so rarely utilized in the games we've now seen? That is true. These teams are very direct. They don't go for too many mind games or fakes. And that may be what is needed to push the game above and beyond this current level of play. Because I do think this is the best Rocket League we have seen this series, this Grand Finals. And I think more and more teams will try and play as much like this as possible. We do have teams that have parts of it, but aren't quite the complete package like these teams are. And I think more heady fakes may be what's required to gain the next upper hand, because it's just so hard to have the presence of mind to deliberately miss the ball. Because when you're going for it, you're trying to think of all your options, like, oh, if I hit it off the corner, it'll go like this. If I hit it off the backboard, if I make an infield pass, if I hit it up off the ceiling, off the wall, off the side. So then a lot of times it just doesn't cross your mind, what if I just don't hit it at all? What if I dodge out of the way? Because a lot of the time it's not good. If you're the last one back, it's not good. If you don't have a teammate following you, it's not good. If your teammate's not ready for it, it's probably not good. So teams are going to need to start practicing it a lot to implement it so that everyone's on the same page, because it can go disastrously bad if not everyone's on the same page when you go for it. So it'll need to be decided more ahead of time. Someone will need to decide, I might go in for a fake here, and be thinking about that the whole way through. And that we're not quite at that point yet, I think. Do I feel as if short infield passes are more of the meta? I think it depends what the defenses are giving you, but I do think it's easier to cover the longer cross-field passes. Now that teams are getting better at cutting rotations in, like I've described, to defend passes, when you're cutting in rotation like that, it's very easy to defend the long pass. But deciding to commit to the short pass is much harder, because that interferes a lot more with your rotations. If you're cutting in all the way past your net to defend a pass, then your team's going to be very clumped. But if you're just cutting in before you get to net to defend a cross-field pass, it's much easier. So I think that's a lot of the reason that teams are going for these shorter ones. They're very direct and very quick, harder to react to. So I think when they're available, they are quite strong, but they are also harder to pull off. Yeah, I think a lot of the fakes we see are not in the style that can end up being good. There are a lot of times where you see someone will whiff. They're not trying to fake, but it'll work out super well for them. And it doesn't happen as much at this level, but there's also a lot less whiffs. So I think it would happen at some points too. And then it'll really become a mind game at some point for whether or not they're actually going to hit the ball. And I do think it will happen eventually. I've been saying that for a while. I don't know how long it will take for teams to start feeling comfortable bringing it out, though, because, again, it does have pretty strong repercussions if your teammate's not ready for it. Why do I think Dignitas is so good at passes? I think they just understand each other better than anyone else, and they always know what each other are doing. So they have full faith that their teammates will be in the position they think they'll be at, and I think that's a very large reason why they're so good at it. They're also very accurate with their passes. Ignored? I didn't really understand your question, so I was not sure I would be able to give a satisfactory response. Am I actually growing out the beard? No, I just haven't shaved for... since the last show, I guess. It like doesn't grow fast enough for me to shave it every day, so it doesn't really become a habit. And then, so sometimes I just forget. Usually I remember to shave before the show, but it's not long enough that I felt the need, and I took longer to analyze this set than I was expecting, so I didn't have time to do it in the like 15 minutes before I turn on my stream like usual. All right. While I wait to see if there's any more questions, I do want to ask for some feedback on something I asked for in the last show, but I uploaded it pretty late, so a lot of people might not see it. They might just forgo that one and watch this one when I upload it tomorrow, I think. So I do want to ask, one of the ideas I had for some more content, because I think YouTube's algorithms are very much reliant on uploading a lot of content. You know, I upload like an hour and a half per week on average, but it's all in one go, so it's not going to be showing up in people's feeds every day. So I think I also need to have something that I can do that's a little bit less preparation on my side, as a smaller thing to upload every now and then when I feel like it. But I still want it to kind of fit in my niche of content. So what I was thinking is I would just record myself, I would play one game, and then immediately after I would go in and watch my own replay and focus on myself and what I should be doing better. Because I think a lot of people are very interested in how these RLCS games go and how the meta is developing, what these teams are doing. But I think a lot of people also want to learn how to look at their own games and how to analyze their own play. So I think that could be valuable for some people to see how I would look at myself and see what I need to work on, come up with a plan for how I would work on that. Even though obviously I'm not spending as much time training as usual, but I could say, you know, if I were going to be putting in 4 or 5 hours a day to this game again, what would I conclude that I need to work on based on my gameplay? That kind of thing. So if anyone has any feedback for how they'd like to see that go, if they think it's a good idea, what they think it should be called, anything like that, I'd like to hear that. And I do want to emphasize, it would not come at the cost of this. This is my priority. I would just do that when I feel like it. But if I wanted to cut down on my content, this would be what stays. I'm definitely more interested in doing this replays workshop. So it would absolutely not come at the cost of that. What if I do post-game commentary trying to go through my thought process? Yeah. So I would like play the game, talk about what I'm thinking as I do it, and then also go into the replay, say what I thought happened, what I think could have gone better, see if the replay reflects that, see what I missed during the game in the replay, that kind of thing. Yeah, maybe I could talk about it a little bit before going into the replay and see if my thoughts measure up with that. You prefer watching my analysis on YouTube? Yeah, I can see how there's a benefit to rewinding to see the plays again. I do appreciate people coming out to see it live, but I do also want to make it so that you don't have to feel pressured to see it live, and you can watch it on YouTube if you want to do it like that. I look tense. Yeah, I think I have a little bit of a problem with tensing up sometimes. I think my thinking face looks like I'm angry or like really, maybe not angry, but very bothered or something. Or troubled. It is hard to play well while doing good commentary, but I think it would be more focused on the improvement factor rather than the highest possible quality gameplay, because people can get higher quality gameplay elsewhere at this point. But yeah, I think that'll do it. Thank you guys for tuning in. All of you tuned in live. Anyone watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. And I hope you're looking forward to the next set, the set 2 of this, between these two teams in the grand finals, because it's a crazy set. Probably, at the very least, the best ending we've seen since Rocket League Central Pro League, maybe even better. But yeah, thank you for watching, and hope to see you next time. Oh.